2025 David Riley Player and Coaches Conference. My name is Eva Wong. I am a member of PACE and Vice President of Outreach and one of the organizers of this conference, which we host every year as a venue for people from across the Quiz Bowl community to talk about topics relevant to the game for both coaches and players alike. For those of you who might not know, this conference has been named since 2016 after former PACE member David Riley, who is a longtime Quiz Bowl coach in Illinois, known for his constant efforts to promote good Quiz Bowl in the state, for which he won a Cooper Award in 2012. David passed away in 2015, and since then we have renamed this conference after him. With that, I'm going to start by asking all of our panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam Silverman. I'm a scientist living in Boston.
Hi, my name is Aiden Leahy. I'm currently the president of PACE. Before that, I served as captain and general club organizer for the University of Georgia and a club advisor for Lambert High School in Suwanee, Georgia. I'm really happy to be on this panel and with some really amazing guests.
Hi, I'm Forrest Weintraub. I'm from New York City, formerly of Columbia University, and I was part of the subject editors for this set.
Hi, I'm Sophia Hassan. I recently graduated from Lindbergh High School, and that's in St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm really happy to be here.
Hey, my name is Riley Melville. I'm the president of the Purdue Quiz Bowl team, and prior to that, I played for Chaska High School in Minnesota.
Hi, my name's Ben. I'm a med student in Minnesota. Before that, I did my undergrad also in Minnesota, where I was the president of the Quiz Bowl team, and was previously a captain of the Wayzata High School Quiz Bowl team, also in Minnesota.
Hi, I'm Bern McCauley. I'm the coach at Great Valley High School.
Hello, I'm Andrew Gao. I'm a current sophomore at Belmont, and this is my fourth PACE. I'm very excited to be on this panel.
Thank you very much. Just to let you all know that the format we're going to be doing is we're going to have two blocks. The first one being a discussion on Quiz Bowl in the digital age, and the second being a panelist guided discussion on a variety of miscellaneous topics with a 10-minute break in between. So with that, the first thing I wanted to ask about is technological innovations and opportunities. So this year, both Andrew Nadig and Jeffrey Wu received Cooper Awards primarily for their role in technology in Quiz Bowl, from Yellowfruit to Modak to QB Reader. A lot of these technologies on the front end and back end of Quiz Bowl are changing the elements of how we see the game and how we interact with each other. So I wanted to ask you all, how have you all leveraged technology in your Quiz Bowl spaces, and how has it impacted the way that you engage with the game?
I'd be willing to start there. I definitely think that, at least for me, both on running a club and coaching it, I think that these technologies have done a lot to sort of democratize the amount of information that is being received both by players, for their own studying, and also for coaches and tournament organizers. When I started playing Quiz Bowl technically in like 2011 in fifth grade of all places. It was paper score sheets all the way, and now a lot of rooms, even at the Pace NSC, don't even need a scorekeeper necessarily because Modak has so much functionality to it. And sort of similar to that, it was like the development of things like buzz points and category stats are both from a set editor perspective and also as a player trying to improve, and having this wide array of information at your fingertips in order to write better questions, see, be able to visualize where people are buzzing, what people know. I think, as far as providing as much information as possible, I think more information is generally good when we're trying to improve ourselves and sort of improve as coaches and as players.
And go off of that, so from a tournament director's perspective, I remember back in high school days, like I said, everything was on paper.
a lot of people might know, I am a big spreadsheets nerd. Starting out, I played my first tournament in 2021, so I'm a lot newer than a lot of these other people. But my first tournament was all online. It was during COVID. Most of the tournaments I played used TJ Sheets, like a really good electronic score sheet developed by the people at TJ in Virginia. So basically, I've been using TJ Sheets to run all of my tournaments, and I know a lot of tournaments still use it, even though Modak and Hill Sheets are also amazing applications. But just to talk about like TJ Sheets very briefly, I think having a really good system of like basic like Google Sheets score sheets is really useful for a tournament. They're like easy to use. They don't require like people to learn a new website or technology. People have used spreadsheets before normally. So I think this aspect of technology in Quizbowl is really important. It makes running tournaments a whole lot easier when you don't have to collect a bunch of score sheets and like manually input them, maybe make a few stats errors along the way. So I think the score sheets are really important. And for me, I've developed sort of like a live stats hub that like adds on to TJ Sheets. And basically what it does is it like pulls games directly like once they're done and compiles them into a stat report. That can be shared with players just on a Google Sheet. So it's basically like yellow free, but it updates live, so it doesn't require the TD to do anything. And I think live stats has been a really awesome development in Quizbowl. You see nationals like NAQTs and PACE using live stats, and I think this is really awesome for both players and coaches to be able to follow along with stats. For spectators even at home to be able to watch teams, watch their score sheets. So I think overall, like the advent of a lot of new technologies in Quizbowl has been really awesome to improving the game.
With all spreadsheets. But I do love a good spreadsheet, and I've only been able to staff one tournament so far, and that was the one that hosted at our high school this year. But as somebody who is completely new to the staffing game, we used Hill Sheets, and I was able to get into it fairly easily. Like everything was straightforward, everything was spelled out. I was able to focus on the room and what was happening, and get the numbers in and get them correct. And that was really nice because it makes it easier to find volunteers for things like this when you have better technology and when it's easier to understand. Because if I had to go into this having to know how to use some complicated application, it probably wouldn't have gone as well. It probably would have been harder to get members of our team to staff and to get other people to be able to staff. Because I know even a couple people's parents were able to staff because of how easy these technologies have become. And like Andrew, I started playing in 2022. So I have been fortunate enough to live in the digital age with Quizbowl. But I'm really glad that it's been made so straightforward because I think it makes it more accessible to like a wider range of people in general.
Yeah, building off of that, I think when I first started directing Quizbowl, and back in the day, you had at our tournament, we used what's called reintroduction, where you would technically have a score sheet because of stats errors would be made. You had to have generally somebody putting the stats into
same lines, one of the things that's really helpful for TDs and even coaches, as someone who's done this a long time, hearing you guys say Twins started in 2012, coach since 2012, is that you as a coach can actually keep track of your teams a lot easier. Because it's a community that relies on volunteers for every event. So when we have these events, you oftentimes are away from your team, and you're trying to do touch points between matches, and if rooms are slightly off schedule, you have no idea for hours on end. You rely then on a TD to get you if there's an issue. Where like instantaneously you can sort of track like my team is here. And that actually really helps just because more coaches then volunteer, which means you can have larger field sizes, and it sort of helps spread the game, and it becomes more accessible because it's not just automated that they can just click their way through to follow along how to score, keep, or moderate. They also don't have that fear of, well, my team's not going to be in touch with me for a couple of hours while I'm doing this. So that's really helped us get some more coaches to be willing to take part.
Forrest and Adam, I know that you two have been very prolific writers and editors in the past, and I just wanted to ask you, in what ways have you used technology to make question writing and editing easier, and how has that kind of made the process like maybe a little bit smoother?
I think the main way in which technology has made question writing easier is I guess twofold. Like the advent of like databases, which have obviously been around for a while, but like I think the QB Reader database has included like a lot of new features, like you can have like reject search and crazy things like that that make it like a lot easier to like navigate and find information about past questions. So like I think like a lot of writers these days are like very reliant on the database to like tell them what's canonical, and this can sort of be a double-edged sword because you don't want people to be like regurgitating past questions. So I guess this is like an inherent part of like learning to become a writer, but like it can be like a very powerful tool if you use it in the right way to like check if a question that you have already written is like pyramidal and is going to play well. And I think in general this it's been a very big help for me personally. And then the other like major change that we've had recently is with like the advent of BuzzPoint stats. Like you're not really like guessing anymore about how past questions played. If they're from a tournament with BuzzPoint stats, you can say, okay, this toss-up like cliffed on this clue, or this bonus part got underconverted, so maybe we should treat it differently than we would if we just saw that like a certain past set has used this clue, which is again just very useful if you are trying to like generally like improve like the difficulty control and calibration of your questions. So I think those are the main like positives that have come out of technology. There is a major downside from like out of Quizbowl, which is that like search engines are getting worse because of the amount of like AI slop that is being produced. And like Google now has like an AI like chatbot that is automatically the first thing that comes up when you search. So it's a lot more difficult to like discern what is a credible source versus like what is not a credible source, or what is an AI hallucination. And I don't really know if I have an answer to that. But I think that is something that like the community has like started reckoning with now and is probably going to have to reckon with more over the next few years as machine learning becomes more dominant. I don't know if others have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I joked with a friend earlier that I think the automated Google AI first result is the worst thing that has been invented for writing Quizbowl questions because it's always wrong, and you're always believe it, and you always have to dig in more. I think those are great points. One thing that I don't know if it fits in the vein of the technology, so to speak, but I think it goes hand in hand with it. Having worked on sets now for more than a decade, I think the degree to which integrating on kind of social platforms like Discord, especially for set collaboration, has been a huge change in the game in the last 5 or so years. And in particular, I think it's allowed a much bigger writing pool, a much more collaborative writing pool, and it's made sets a lot better because it brings in more people to give feedback on this, to actually give live, here's where I would have buzzed on this question. Before, it was a lot of people writing in Google Docs that nobody opened the other subject editor's Google Docs. It was a very lonely process. It was very disheartening. It was I don't know, disconcerting almost how much it was you were responsible for a solo editing job where no one was talking to each other, and I think it's been a huge leap forward that technology has facilitated much better collaboration on sets.
Having the opportunity to work on sets that primarily did use the sort of live feedback models, I definitely think it's been much better for allowing sort of integration, having a much more procedurally improving product that feels a lot more polished at the end state of it. One thing that sort of going off the, I guess, AI swap that Forrest mentioned, that isn't necessarily directly relating to it, but is sort of, I think, a consequence of the way the internet is shaping, as we exit from like Web 2.0, is that it is a problem that I think a lot of communities, like similar to Quizbowl, hobbies communities, sub-communities are sharing, which while Discord is really great for communication, at the same time, the fact that it's not searchable, and the fact that, that these resources are being provided in these more sort of live service almost environment, makes sort of the tracking and archiving of information more difficult than something like the high school quiz forums, which when I started out, that was basically the only thing I was aware of before I joined Discord. And I think it's important to recognize, even though some people who play will probably call me Unk this weekend, that I have the advantage of being a digital native, which not everyone in our community has, and we take things for granted. That the aspect of just joining Discord and figuring it out. Discord is not a particularly user-friendly website if you don't know how to use it already. And particularly, if you're a coach or a player who's just not familiar with the environment, then getting in the process of getting involved with writing and editing when the decisions are being made on platforms that you can't access with a Google search can simultaneously increase democratization with Quizbowl, but also if we're not careful and don't try to make a concerted effort to make sure that everyone has equal access to this information, we could actually end up widening some gaps in access.
One thing I also noticed, as a board member in Columbia's Quiz Club, is the vast majority of people who play Quizbowl are not plugged into the online scene at all. Not even the HSQB forums.
Yeah.
So I think in general, it's important for people who are in club leadership, obviously to pay attention to the forums so they know what events are going on, but then also to communicate this information to other members of their club, let them know that these platforms exist at the very least, and also keep them informed with new events that are going on in the community, opportunities to freelance questions. I think most people at Columbia for a while didn't know about the opportunities for writing in-house rights, for instance. And yeah, I just think it's important for club leadership, for coaches and board members to try to disseminate this information more broadly, because of the inaccessibility of these platforms.
Well, actually, Forrest and Aiden's point actually brings me right to my next topic, which is in recent years we've seen a large shift of Quizbowl towards online, which is whether it's playing on QB Reader, chatting with others on Discord, or writing sets of people across the country. And the question I wanted to pose is how can we use these technologies to open up communities and open up avenues of outreach, increase opportunities to get better without becoming too insular and fragmented, as Forrest mentioned.
Community of Quizbowl people across Missouri, but also across the entire country through these online communities. Like, for me, I joined the Lindbergh Quizbowl team the first year it ever existed. I'm kind of the original member, which is crazy, but we were on our own, essentially. We didn't know anybody from other schools yet. We didn't have any good connections. And I remember someone got me onto the Missouri Quiz Bowl Discord server, and that opened up a whole new avenue for me of people I could talk to. Like that's how I met Eva, and people I could talk to, and opportunities I could find out about things like I didn't even know what the SAT team was until I got on that server. And then through that I was able to find nationwide communities. Like you know, the HS Quiz Bowl server, there are smaller enclaves of Quiz Bowl servers that I've been able to make friends across the entire country with. And I feel like if we focus on those spaces, like there's a girls Quiz Bowl server, there's an LGBTQ plus Quiz Bowl server. If we take those spaces and use those as a tool for outreach, because those are where I've been able to make a lot of my really close friends in this community, then I feel like that would be a really good tool, especially because those are spaces where people like high school players, college players, and like olds as we call them. I'm sorry for that, but we'll be able to connect, and we'll be able to share advice with each other and open up new avenues, especially for young players and people who need the experience. Because for me, that was one of the most welcoming things was finding other people who were willing to give me advice on Quiz Bowl without being judgmental and willing to be like, oh, you're from a new school, that's cool, instead of, oh, you're from a new school, we're going to shut you out of the community. I think it's about finding the right people, but also about bringing awareness to the communities that already exist and opening them up to more people.
About how these online Quiz Bowl communities can sort of expand outreach, make people feel at home. But I think there's also a very important point to be made here about how these online communities must be very well moderated, make people feel welcome. I am somewhat biased as a moderator on the middle school Discord server and the Northeast Quiz Bowl Discord server. I'd say these are really great communities for introducing people to games. There's a lot of people active. They're all very welcoming for the most part. I think it's just really important to have like a large moderator pool of people who are active, engaged, and sort of have proven that they are kind, respectful people on these servers to just make sure everything's going well, there's no like incidents, there's no misconduct. So yeah, I agree. Like these platforms are really awesome. Like Discord, you get to chat with people 24/7, and you get to share funny anecdotes, photos, type endlessly. There's a lot of great stuff. But just like it's also really important that these are well moderated.
Definitely.
I think I'd like to sort of share a different perspective here, which is it's great hearing the stories like players. And with my players, I encourage them to get into those Discord servers. But coming from the public school world as a teacher, there's a lot of barriers for coaches on that, which is it creates all sorts of policy challenges for school districts. So basically, my players sort of add their friends and teammates into that, and it's a great community. Many of my players have gotten very good from connecting with people across the country, things they could have done 10, 15 years ago. But as a coach, you have to have almost a blind trust that your team's going to have the ethical responsibility that they're in a completely deregulated world that you really aren't overseeing, but is often connected to your school, your program. Even when there's like tournaments that are on Discord, it adds in another layer. That basically it's like, hey, remember at all times you're representing the school, even though you're using what's largely a personal non-school account. And I think when we talk about the outreach component, it's phenomenal for like the democratization of the game and getting players connected and growing the game with those actual authentic connections these kids make with friends from around the country. But for a lot of the coaches and like the institutions, it's actually a bigger barrier to outreach in some cases. Like in Pennsylvania, a lot of the coaches are still very much just using email to communicate. Most of our tournament directors reach out through email. Some events still do like the old paper mailing to us. And that's not necessarily something that you can overcome with like Discord when it's not as user-friendly for some of these public school teachers. So that's something that's there. Yeah, to that point being blocked, I know some of the schools like meet together. Our players have to meet at one of their houses to play as a group. They go on to the school network, it's completely blocked.
So I wanted to add something. I have a very similar story to Sophia in terms of coming from a school that just recently hasn't really super plugged into the Quiz Bowl scene. I actually discovered it all when one summer day I was bored my freshman sophomore year in high school. I discovered the forums. I made a post like 15 minutes so they never discover Discord. They never discover whatever out there. And so one of the things I've tried to PD is I've tried to. You're never gonna get 100% coverage, but I've tried to like send as much almost like spam people with information as much as I possibly can. Whether it's linked to forums or Discord or QB Reader especially. I get asked by so many teams, hey, how do I get better at this? We just got destroyed. And so it's, maybe your instinct to say, well, if you play more tournaments and you play more practice and you study things on your own, and that's all well and good. But it's almost, you kind of gotta give them all the information with online things, or it's not really a level playing field. And I don't think it's fair to expect all of those team players to discover them on their own. So I've tried to just send as much information as possible, even if it feels like too much. You just gotta make sure nobody's missing out, because it's so easy as someone who is plugged into the community forget how most of it, like we talked about, is hidden or not something obvious. It's not on the NT website where stats are, on the high school quiz bowl website where stats are, right? It's all hidden behind this thing.
TD, I think, share that information because since I got into my specific like the Missouri Quiz Bowl Discord server especially, I have just found people at tournaments and I'm like, hey, I haven't seen you around this, and I think cool. Do you want to get on this because you are obviously like, contributing good things to the community. You're here, you're showing up at a tournament. Do you want this extra resource because it's good? Like I think just being able to share that out, no matter what position you're in, is a really good resource, especially for new players.
And I sort of think I guess my thoughts on what best way forward, sort of a synthesis of what Sophia has been saying and what sort of Bern's thoughts were, which is that I think you really need to meet communities where they are to truly build a coalition. But also I do think that these like regional quiz bowl servers or communities are a really great way to do that coalition building. You may not have anyone on your team who's plugged in, but if your state circuit happens to have a community, you'll likely play someone who's plugged in, and ideally, as Sophia has done, will take that step to make inclusion. Inclusion is an active process. It's not something we just rest our laurels on and sort of expect to just happen because we have to make a server. And I think that's sort of going back to what Bern said. I think that we also need to be aware that there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution to doing proper outreach in this community. Sometimes the best way to share resources is going to be email. Sometimes it's going to be sending a paper packet. Whatever can ease people into having the most enjoyable experience and connecting with people. I found that it's a really worthwhile extra step to take, even if it's a little less convenient than sending someone a Discord link and praying that they have the app downloaded already. But I do think that particularly if we want to make this community one that has a more diverse range of perspectives and experiences, rather than just being the most online teams we know. No offense, I was on an online team too. Then I think that's a really good thing to do. And I know Eric, I think you also had a thought as well. Sure. Yeah.
I'll add like the Discord spaces are great. Coming to the point of like you have to meet people there. I actually think some of my experience is Discord's great for like the second stage of outreach. Once you get someone there, that's when that like community peer-to-peer like expanse comes. So like you're saying, hey, you're at a tournament, people are like, hey, let's get you into this particular Discord community with us. And that's where the growth happens. So for me, like, it's almost like a second stage of outreach. First, you gotta find a way to get them in that door, unless they already know people from some of these other schools. But I do agree, Eric, that it's a great tool, and I wish that more schools were able to enable their teachers to have some of those within their policies.
We're gonna have a question segment at the end of the second block.
Depending on, I think we're good on time if you would like.
Sure, actually, you can do a quick question.
Sure.
I think I'm in a pretty good spot to answer this because I am, as someone put it, like the social butterfly of Missouri Quizzball. So I am lucky enough to have a good friend on pretty much every major team in Missouri. Like I've just managed to pull that. And like our top player in the state, we've been friends like sophomore year. And we've been able to like community together and stuff, and it's actually helped me get a lot better, like being able to play against people that I know I'm going to be competing against in tournaments and seeing what their skill level is and what my skill level is, and being able to match that up is really handy. And also, honestly, it's just fun to like get other schools in St. Louis, and I know we've had scrimmages before. Sometimes we'll even just like there's another school that's like 20 minutes away from mine, and I'm really close with their team. So like sometimes our teams will do things together, and it'll like we've just gone out to lunch before as our two teams, and it's been great. So I think just getting to know other people and getting to know not only how they play, but how they are as people will have a better experience in a tournament. Because for me, tournaments are about like people first, quiz second. Not you know, it's a very close second, obviously. But I think having that camaraderie also just makes for a better culture in general, makes it easier to play for the love of the game, instead of just playing as in like, oh, I'm going to take down this person or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's really awesome, and also like it's kind of crazy to like know someone and be like best friends with someone. It's really awesome. But sort of the point about like using Discord as a way to study and get better at like scrimmage, I think it's a very powerful platform in that aspect. When I was in middle school, I was like part of a scrimmage server with a bunch of like active players, and it was sort of like a free-for-all thing. It was like less organized. It was just like there are like a few players in each team who are interested in getting extra practice, hearing more questions. So this became a big thing when I was in 7th and 8th grade. And then preparing for like 2023 middle school nationals, I like made a server where it was like Cheddar would play these other teams, and it was really good practice for us. I think it's a really powerful way to get more experience in. There's really no better practice than like playing another team and like simulating an actual game. So I think Discord has the power of like connecting teams like online and being able to do scrimmages that you sometimes wouldn't be able to do like logistically in person.
Also into everything, especially Andrew, and I kind of want to wrap this up since you're asking about Indiana specifically. I have observed very clearly that the players in Indiana that like play open tournaments together, and there have been several, they are the players that improve the most rapidly. It's a very clear correlation. So yes, that's a very positive thing to try and shoot for because it's very powerful and effective.
All right. right. I think we are approaching a break time, from my understanding. So we're actually going to take a 10-minute break from here, and then we're going to come back and start the second part of the panel, along with a 20-minute question section at the end for any coaches or players who might be interested in asking any questions. So, all right. Thank you very much. Good. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, I'm Eva Wong, and this is the 2025 David Riley Coaches Conference. We're going to do a quick reintroduction, starting with Andrew over there.
Hello, I'm still Andrew Gao, sophomore at Belmont High School, and we are so back.
I'm Vern McCauley, the coach at Great Valley High School.
Ben Weiner, med student at the University of Minnesota.
Riley Melville, president of the Purdue Quiz Bowl team and frequent TD of Indiana High School Quiz Bowl events.
Okay. I thought you were going to introduce me. Okay.
Go.
Okay. I'm Sophia Hassan. I recently graduated senior of Lindbergh High School in St. Louis, Missouri.
I'm Forrest Weintraub. I live in New York, and I formerly played at Columbia.
I'm still Aiden Leahy. I'm still the president of PACE for at least another month until I'm unceremoniously ousted. And you already know who I am.
And I'm Adam Silverman. I'm a scientist living in Boston and have been writing and editing science questions for a while now.
All right. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is Quiz Bowl has allowed a lot of players to discover new interests they may not have ever thought of or see their previous hobbies in entirely different lenses. So I wanted to ask you all, in what ways has Quiz Bowl affected the way that you live your life outside of the game, and how have you kind of brought that perspective back into it?
I can start. So for me, I've always been like a massive reader. Like since preschool, I think books have just been like my everything. And my main topic for Quiz Bowl is literature. But I didn't start out that way. I kind of, like I said, Lindbergh was a new team when I joined, so I didn't really know how to get good at one specific thing. And then I found out that I knew a little bit about books, and I just decided to dive headfirst into that. And so being in Quiz Bowl has definitely gotten me better recommendations on just what to read, how to be a better, because I write too, so how to be a better writer, how to be a better reader, how to do better analysis, which has helped me in both Quiz Bowl and also just in school. And also I've discovered so many cool classics and authors that I knew, but like I didn't know their works, or authors that I didn't know, and it's been really fun. And also I've just been able to bond with people about so much nerdy stuff, and it's so much fun because that's like one of my favorite things about meeting new people is like finding common interests and then just getting to talk about those. And some of my closest relationships have been formed through Quiz Bowl and just being able to talk about like mutual things and being able to like QB reader together and being able to just be like, have you read this Jane Austen book? What did you think of it? You know, things that normal teenagers talk about.
Yeah, I think this is a really awesome question, and for me, even though I've only been playing for about 4 years, I really don't know where to start. Quiz Bowl has like made its way into so many facets of my life, and I really hate to use the term, but I've experienced a lot of like Quiz Bowl brain rot. Like when I'm like out in public, like there's something that's come up in Quiz Bowl before, I'm like, oh wait, that's that stock clue. And it's like really exposed me to a lot of different topics that I don't think I would have been interested in had I not discovered Quiz Bowl. One that comes to mind is architecture. Like I took a architecture tour with my team of Chicago this morning, and it was really awesome. And Quiz Bowl just really introduced me to the vast world of architecture and how cool it is. And as you can maybe expect, I was nerding out the whole time. It was an awesome experience. It like Quiz Bowl overall has just since I'm more of a generalist, has just like increased my breadth of knowledge a lot, so I'm able to like talk to people about like literature, even though I'm a sort of fake lit player, and like geography and stuff like that. So it's really awesome.
So just to add to that, of course, I co-sign everything that everyone has said about like Quiz Bowl exposing them to new things. I think that's like probably the biggest value is it like it sort of like turns you into like a classical humanist who is like into like all of the different subjects and also science if you are into science. More people should be into science. But anyway, I think that's undoubtedly the biggest value of Quiz Bowl, but another big value that I found is it like makes your memory better because you are trying to like actively remember every new thing that you encounter so that you don't forget it in a game situation. And like I experienced this because like I joined Quiz Bowl like in the middle of college, and I found that I retained like a lot more of the material from my courses like after I joined Quiz Bowl because I knew that like even when like the semester was done and I had like finished a class, there would still be like a use for that information. And I think it's just generally really valuable to be taught like every time you like encounter a new fact, that's something you want to like actually incorporate into your worldview or incorporate it into your experience of the world rather than just like retain it in the short term to try to get points on a test.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would add on to that. I think it's a really powerful thing that the Quiz Bowl community is full of people that are
Absolutely.
like that, where every time you go to a tournament and you're reading a toss-up, it's like I'm conveying this new interesting fact to you, and it's people that are receiving of that information. And I keep thinking back, Ken Jennings had an editorial in the New York Times this week, and he talked about the same kind of thing, which is like the death of facts right now in our society, and how people don't value trivia or facts in a world where it's so easy to just have it at your fingertips. So why would we watch Jeopardy anymore? And I think that Quiz Bowl really empowers this thinking of like we should know these things, right? And they enrich us just not because they're facts, but because they contribute to like culture, right, and society. I, yeah.
So, sort of segueing from, what Adam said, which I think is very true. I'd like to come at this from like a slightly different perspective because every so often you see either a student or a parent who is like, well, like being really good at quiz will get my child into Harvard or whatever. And unfortunately, the answer is absolutely not. Whether you get into Harvard will be due to some combination of luck, privilege, talent, and then work ethic, or none of the above, or all of the above. It's kind of random, but ultimately, what Quiz Bowl can do as someone who is unfortunately employed. I work as a grant writer. I'm a community development specialist. I assist local governments with getting water lines down and getting roads built, sort of backline stuff. And from my perspective, I would say that the writing and editing I did for Quiz Bowl was maybe singularly more valuable for the work I do in my day-to-day life than pretty much any individual college class I took. As far as sort of priming myself for learning new information and being able to convey that in a very, succinct way, it very much lends itself to academic and technical writing. Additionally, I just think that, and maybe this is my own bias showing, I do think that, engaging in Quiz Bowl and sort of developing these sort of real interests, even if originally you're doing it for points, or, being able to get a good buzz, can make you a more interesting, well-rounded person. This is going to be kind of my boomer soapbox, but I think the generation coming up is going to be less well-read than pretty much any generation preceding it. And I think that sort of more than ever, being able to, write creatively, being able to, read history, to, be able to talk about your favorite book. It may not immediately correlate to, your ROI and your earnings, but I think it's, sort of what Forrest was alluding to, will make you, and has made me, I'd like to think, a person more engaged and interested in the world around me. And if you do want to learn about ROI and stuff, I'll pass it to Ben, who's going to be a doctor. So
Hopefully. Yeah. No, I think everyone had really good points. I think Quiz Bowl, from like generating new interests, is super valuable, particularly in things that you might be interested in but not really know like how to get into the space. So for an example, in middle school, I was in jazz band and I enjoyed listening to jazz, but I didn't really know many of like the canonical greats outside of a couple. And I think that like Quiz Bowl is very beneficial in that sense of like kind of telling you what's important. And I think there's a lot of good discussions to be had about who gets to decide what's important. But I think it's still doing a pretty good job for some of these more niche experiences that maybe you wouldn't get in a middle school or high school classroom, especially with topics like, the fine arts for one, philosophy, I mean, even like world religions. I think I learned a lot through Quiz Bowl that, we had a world religions class in school, but it didn't go as deep as some Quiz Bowl questions do. So I think there's a lot of good information that you can learn just passively. Maybe you're not super interested in it, but you pick up on something. You're like, oh, that book sounds cool. I'm going to give that a read, even though I'm not a literature player. And then you end up finding one of your favorite authors. Kind of happened to me with Kurt Vonnegut and through Quiz Bowl. So I think that's even in a category that maybe you're not a specialist in or that you don't necessarily have an interest in learning a lot about, there's still value to just kind of being there and passively learning through the Quiz Bowl question.
Yeah, sorry to double dip here, but I think it's the points about literature have been like really important here. And I think, first of all, like literature is one of the categories in Quiz Bowl that is often cited as being like unapproachable, like it's hard, like, and I think that is true. But I think it's also really great that Quiz Bowl has 4-4 lit in most cases, because as Aiden points out, like this generation that I'm a part of, and I'm part of the problem. I'm a lit player who doesn't read, right? I think like it's really important to still emphasize the like importance of these books, these classics, and I really don't know like any other competition that focuses as much on sort of like the more niche, like the older but still like super important works. And I think it's great that Quiz Bowl like still puts a focus on this, even if we're tossing up like old British novelists, Henry James, for example. I think it's awesome that like this is still like a thing and it's not being erased from like the generation's mind, basically.
Got plenty of time to read some real books. You've got plenty of time.
All right. So my next topic that I wanted us to talk about is a big part of Quiz Bowl and a big part of winning a lot of Quiz Bowl games is the ability to, for the lack of a better word, not get tilted. So for players, I wanted to ask about the importance of a mental game in developing one, and for coaches, I want to ask how we can help students to be at their best when they're like playing.
So I've got a great answer to this one. So it's very hard to not get tilted at Quiz Bowl tournaments and nationals and PACE and HSNCT and whatnot. But it's even harder to not get tilted when you're playing bad Quiz Bowl, like I did growing up playing Knowledge Bowl in Minnesota, and I know many of us have. That's how we get our start. So, and I remember when I started in middle school, I would come home from every single tournament, feeling like it had been ruined somehow. Bad questions, or bad answer lines, or bad tournament direction, or all of the above. But I played Knowledge Bowl for 7 years, unfortunately. And I think I eventually learned, this is like a super common sports mantra, but one question at a time. I know that's like everyone says it. I know it sounds silly. But it does work. You just have to throw out the score, throw out the fact that, whatever's going on is not what you want to be. It's one question at a time. Like, anyone can get any one question. You could have me play against Harvard A, and I might get a question eventually. And, like, you play every question, and you flush it out, and you can think about, the other stuff later. And it takes a lot of time and effort and practice to get to the point where you can do that. But that is, ultimately, you kind of gotta lock in, as the kids say. And yeah.
And I think along those lines, it's not just not getting tilted on individual questions, but I'm a big believer that Quiz Bowl is so much more than the game itself. And I think that, obviously I think winning is, I'm not going to sit up here and say winning's not important, because for a lot of people winning is important, and we're all here because we enjoy knowing things, and knowing more things is how you win Quiz Bowl games. So I think winning to an extent is important, but especially looking at like these national competitions, these are some crazy smart kids from all around the country, and all but 4 or 5 of them are going to leave losers in the game part on the gameplay side of things. So I think it's really important to not let the results of the game or individual questions, or oh, I could have had that buzz earlier, or oh, I shouldn't have said that on that toss-up. I think the most important thing is don't let that ruin the experience, because high school's short, college is short, relatively speaking. and you should really be using these years. I wouldn't want to look back on my high school years and be like, wow, I really was upset about that one question on Madame Bovary that I got wrong. I would instead be like, oh yeah, I met this person from this high school, and then now we're friends on Discord. Or oh yeah, I gotta share this interest with a moderator after I got a question right about this. Or I think that there's a lot of ways that you can have a successful weekend in Quiz Bowl, even if it's not just winning. And while it is inevitably, as you mentioned, it's tough to not get tilted when you get things wrong or when you're in a bit of a rut. But understanding that you can be successful in Quiz Bowl without doing a lot of winning. And I think Sophia had a great example of just meeting new people. That's one of the easiest things to do in Quiz Bowl, and it's also one of the most, if not the most, rewarding part of being a part of this game.
Yeah, I was literally just about to say that exactly. My I'm like a massive extrovert.
Really?
And thank you, Aiden. Wow. If you couldn't already tell, people are like the biggest joy in my life, meeting new people and the relationships I already have and building new relationships. I try to do that everywhere I go. Like, literally yesterday, my coach told me I was complimenting too many strangers on the street. Oops. But being able to do that, like, one memory that really stands out to me is I met a bunch of people, like bunch of Quiz Bowl players from New York, and I met them online, and we became like super good friends. And then I went to New York with my mom. This was like my sophomore year of high school, and I met up with my Quiz Bowl friends from New York, and we just spent the day at the Met together, and we like got waffles and we walked around, and it was so much fun. And I wouldn't have gotten to meet these people if it weren't for the Quiz Bowl community. And like, for me, I go into every single tournament wanting to do well, but also like my main goal as a Quiz Bowl player has always been make people feel accepted. Like, I want to be the person, I want to be the friendly team. I want to be the player that that nobody's afraid to talk to. I want to be the person that makes a better community and the person that helps other people, especially newer players or players from smaller schools, because I know in Missouri we have a lot of schools that are just literally nowhere. I want to be the person that helps them feel accepted, because being accepted in the Quiz Bowl community has done such amazing things for me. And so, like Ben was saying, for me, being successful in Quiz Bowl is about a little bit, obviously, like knowing things and getting, clout because you're smart and because you know things. But it's mostly about building relationships and building community and getting to meet cool people and getting to share interests. And basically, if I walk away from a Quiz Bowl tournament having met a new person, which always happens, I can feel satisfied. Like, even Pace hasn't even started yet, and I've already met new people. And that is, for me, the biggest part of Quiz Bowl. And my advice, I guess, is like literally exactly what Ben said. Like, focus on the people, focus on the memories that you make with them and not the buzzes. Because I know for me, I am very hard on myself. I still remember bad buzzes from literally sophomore year. Like freshman, sophomore year. But I also think back and I'm like, you know what? We didn't make playoffs at HSNCT, whatever. But you know what we did do at HSNCT? I ran into this really cool person and we got to talk about sharks. That's what I remember. Because that was fun. That was worthwhile, and that's something that I'm going to remember. And I know a lot of the Quiz Bowl friends that I have right now I'm going to have through college, and I'm going to have potentially even farther than college. And I know these guys, and they're old, so, we can keep going. Like, just community in general, I think, is what you should be focused on, what you should try to focus on. Because I know a lot of Quiz Bowl players are also like on the more introverted side, at least in my experience, and a lot of teams tend to keep to themselves, like within their team circle. But I think I've been able to, by meeting people on other teams, I've been able to connect teams with each other also, which I think has just done a lot of good for especially like newer players in the circuit.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, coming from a coach perspective, there's a certain degree of competitiveness that, like, naturally is built into the game. And as somebody who many, many years ago played, like, the Pennsylvania 3-team format, I remember specific questions I got wrong, have that emotional tie-in that still is there decades later. But you have that from the competitive nature. But as you get older, that sort of like anger and frustration of those moments goes away, and you realize that it is about those memories, and it's not just a quiz bowl skill. It's like a life skill. Like, I also coach soccer, played soccer, and years later I don't think about my time playing soccer, playing quiz bowl as those like moments of like frustration or success, but it's really that whole story of like, I did this with my friends. And I think if we sometimes step back, like as we get older, we realize that those moments matter a lot. So I think like when you say like the community's there, it absolutely does play a role, because yeah, it's gonna hurt in that moment. Like, toss up 20 is the one that I missed, or I should have got that and could have won the game. But there was 19 other questions, and then later on in life, you're gonna be like, wow, that was a really great weekend with my friends when we got to play all of these schools from around the country. But when you're 17, 18, that's really hard to do that, because it's raw and in the moment, and it takes a little while for that to play out. So, reminding, like as a coach, reminding players that that's really what you're going to stick with you over time is important, because there's that frustration of we just lost or whatever. You don't even sometimes, like I'm sure some of you have been here, you don't even want that like second place trophy or whatever it is, because the loss is fresh. But 5 years later or a year later, you're gonna be like, man, I remember when we got second place at that event. It's gonna have a much different feel to it. So that like just taking that minute to like put it into perspective really helps.
I think it's funny that you mentioned remembering bad buzzes from sophomore year, because I, in fact, remember some bad buzzes from my sophomore year, which is, in fact, happening right now. Yeah, no, I've had a few bad tournaments recently, and I think, like, I've been thinking, like, I think it's really important to have teammates who will support you, who will say, yeah, sure, that was a bad buzz, but we move on, right? We need to log back in. We need to focus on the current question. So I have been, like, I'm pretty lucky to be someone who is, I guess, more chill during a game. Like, in all of my quiz bowl playing, I don't think I've really tilted that much. But I do recognize, like, there are definitely people who perceive the game differently, who, care more about winning, and I also care about winning. But like, I think it's important to approach them and like have like a whole like team discussion about like, yeah, so this is why we need to not tilt. This is why we need to stay calm. And I think a good way to approach it is you say, like, if you are tilted, you cannot focus on the next question, and that's what really matters. Like, you can't reverse something in the past. You just have to focus on the next question. And if you lose the game, as long as you tried your best, like, that's all right. And I think overall, like, at a tournament, I think, yeah, number one should be, like, the people, the experience. And then number two should be quiz bowl, as you mentioned. So I think that's a really important mindset to have, especially if you are on a competitive team. Like, there are high expectations, you will be stressed, but it's good to like break that stress, just have fun, and just like enjoy yourself.
I want to take a slightly different perspective on this, which is that like in my personal case, I simply do care more about winning than about people. Like, it is obviously very important to have both as part of your Quiz Bowl experience. Like, Quiz Bowl is not worth it without either, in my opinion. But I also want to recognize that like different people approach the game with different sets of values, and it's okay to do that. You don't need to like reorient your relationship to the game and decide that you don't care about it as much. However, if you decide that you do care about it a lot, there are still ways that you can have like a much healthier relationship to the game. Like with what Andrew talks about, of course, it is like very important to have like a future-oriented mindset with the game, and it's also like very important to be able to like stay calm in round, but it's also like difficult to actually do that in the moment. So there's a lot of like preparation that goes into having like a good in-game mindset. And this can take the form of like preparing breathing exercises. Like, at my core, I am a band kid, and so like every activity that I do, if I ever get nervous, I just do like in for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4, and so on, and it like does wonders to calm me down. Just like finding something like that works for you, like beforehand, is really important. Like making sure that you're able to like develop like a more healthy play style like before you get into the game is really important for making sure that you have a good mindset when you're actually in the game. You can focus on it instead of being like, I need to stop tilting or whatever. You can be like, okay, this is how I know I will stop myself from tilting.
I definitely sort of echo Forrest's thoughts there. As someone who similarly has never much cared for the power of friendship when it comes to Quiz Bowl. I love the friends I've met through Quiz Bowl, but I am also I have someone who's tilted before. I have someone who has not been the best loser in the world before. And I think one thing that at the very least has helped me with my philosophy as a player, and sort of propagating that as a coach and as an advisor for teams, is that ultimately Quiz Bowl is, despite the sort of like team versus team aspect, it is ultimately a game of self-improvement. Like pretty much like as far as, activities go, even if you sit at your table for a whole tournament and don't buzz in once, or you buzz in once and you're wrong, and you remember that clue from your sophomore year, that bad neg that you missed. That's a bad neg you're not going to make again the next time that comes up. You're sort of always iterating and sort of always, if you look at it, improving. The sum of knowledge you have from Quiz Bowl is, unless you get into a bad accident, and I hope you don't, generally going to increase over time. And I think that's something that's really really great. That sort of sense of feeling like you're improving. At least for me, making it more like, how can I try to be better than the player I was last year? What can I try to learn compared to what I knew the last tournament? How can I always be trying to be better, and being kind to myself when I don't sort of meet the marks I set for myself. And I think as a coach, we can sort of be a supportive environment for player to sort of encourage that sort of attitude of ultimately at the end of the day, to sort of segue to I read a forum post on the High School Quiz Bowl forums from Andrew Zhang of Stanford, called Heart Rate Theory, which was admittedly a very kind of silly, a very sort of silly, exaggerated post of what I think is a very true idea, that ultimately, your the optimal way to play is to play against the packet. It's you and the packet, not necessarily you and the other team. They're also sort of playing parallel, but really it's you trying to you know obtain more knowledge relative to the packet you're playing. And as a coach, during the interim, I was talking with Adam about sort of our experiences and how I think Quiz Bowl has sort of shifted away from being seen as a zero-sum game by the community. Like scrimmaging wasn't really like, it was kind of frowned upon when we were playing in high school, and that's much less stigmatized now. And I think part of that is that these ideas are becoming more accepted, and that we are feeling that that by mutually improving and bettering ourselves, then that's great, because we're facing stronger competition. We're all getting better, and relative to everything else and the people who came before us, we know a lot more, which can feel really good. So, in short, as someone very sympathetic to the plight of tilting, I think there are ways to look at it that, as Forrest said, are a lot healthier, and I'm sure Adam could add something to that as well, or not. That's fine too.
That's fair.
It wouldn't have been healthy, what I would say. Back for now.
All right. Well then, let's move on to our final topic. And for this one, I would like to advise people that we would like to keep a block open for questions. So if the panelists could just make sure to keep their answers somewhat concise to some degree, that would make things a lot helpful, just so that we have the time for any kind of questions. So again, our final topic is how we can create a culture of acceptance in Quiz Bowl. As we all know, Quiz Bowl has historically had issues when it comes to inclusion, especially in regards to the place of women and queer individuals in the game. Obviously, we've made a number of steps over the years in regards to making spaces for these groups, such as the Women in Quiz Bowl event tomorrow, which you all should go to.
It's at 7 p.m.
We still have a long way to go. So I wanted to give you all just an opportunity to just round out this panel to talk about ways that we can get these underrepresented groups into Quiz Bowl and what strategies we can use to make our game a bigger and more welcoming one.
I feel like I'm always starting it off, but
Go ahead.
member of both. I mean, woman. Well, I'm a woman. Member of the women community. No, as a woman and also as a member of the queer community, going back to what I said earlier, I have really leaned on those communities, those online communities that have helped me find people in person. I've been able to meet people through the online communities and then meet up with them in person and be like, oh, hey, I know somebody here who is like me. That makes me feel a little bit better. Because right now on our team that we brought here, out of the main people playing, I'm the only girl. And the whole year on our A team, I've been the only girl, and not gonna lie, it's a little frustrating. Obviously, I mean, my teammates are great. They are fantastic. But it's just a really interesting experience being the only woman in a space, because there's so much that you can't really explain, I guess, that you just have to be able to understand. And it's not like the fault of people who aren't women for not understanding. It's like you just kind of can't control that, right? But I think getting more women in and more queer people in the Quiz Bowl space would also just foster a healthier understanding of each other, because I know in Quiz Bowl there's as much of an accepting space as it is for like the weird kids, and yes, this is as a weird kid, this is absolutely where I feel at home, because I know everybody else is also a weird kid, and it's great. As much as it is that, we all still struggle with stereotypes in the Quiz Bowl community, like a lot. And I think if we were able to open up recruiting opportunities and specifically have Quiz Bowl opportunities like the online girls and non-binary people tournament that happens. Is it in the summer, maybe? I think it's in the
multiple
summer.
times a year.
I know there's at least one online tournament, just for people that aren't guys, and it's pretty great. I haven't done it before, but I've heard that it's pretty great. And if we have more opportunities like that, and also if individually at schools, people take the time to look a little deeper and see, try to get past just the like, I am looking for the smart kid, like the picture of a smart kid, which because of biases and gifted identification and all of that usually tends to be a cis guy. If you can try to look a little deeper than that when you're recruiting individually, and I know because I do recruitment for my team, I am the club activities table basically, and I try to seek out as many people as I can from all kinds of backgrounds. Like, I will just pull whatever stranger decides to come up, and I will just give them my spiel. And I will specifically seek out, like, when I'm going and recruiting just around, I will specifically seek out people who don't necessarily fit that, like, smart kid, like the smart kid, right? But they're still super smart. They still know so much, and I know they'd still be good at this. It's just hard to tell, because a lot of the time you can't see it because of the way we've constructed that image of what being smart is and what being good at trivia is. And I think being able to have events like the Women in Quiz Bowl Social, have communities online, in person, is a great way to be able to make people feel like they're more accepted here, because I know definitely, like, there are definitely not as many women at this tournament as there are men. Absolutely. And that's always going to feel a little bit weird, right? But the fact that we have a space to come together tomorrow night and just, like, make friends with each other and know that we're not the only one, even though it sometimes definitely totally feels like that. Because it can feel super isolating sometimes being the only anything in a space. I'm sure all of you guys can relate to that. As long as we have a space to come together, and as long as we make the effort to get more people of these underrepresented groups, both individually and nationally, in Quiz Bowl, and just interested, and just make them feel like it's a place where they would be accepted, I think that's where we need to go with that.
Whenever conversations about sort of equity in Quiz Bowl come up, to some extent they often like feel foreign to my lived experience as like running a club, because my club never had any of those problems. And I think part of the reason why our club had such positive representation across the board when I was in college is kind of because like the vast majority of our club didn't play in high school and didn't have preconceived notions about what the community is and who belongs in the community. When you assemble when you assemble the act of playing Quiz Bowl from first principles, then like it really is an activity for everyone. And I really think that to keep it short, that it is essential when you're running a club, when you're coaching, when you're moderating these spaces, that people want to feel belonging in, that you vigilantly promote a culture of radical acceptance. Because without maintaining that vigilantly, then those preconceived notions are going to seep in. It really is something that can't be allowed to be tolerated and fester in our community, because Quiz Bowl is an activity for everyone, and it needs to be.
I think that's a really great point, and I think the point of view of a club leader is really important here as well. Uh, Perhaps less so because we don't face the issue of being like the only person in the room of a certain demographic, but I think as a club leader, it is really important to create that really like welcoming, like as you said, like radically inclusive like culture. Um, and I think that should really be the role of a club leader. Just make sure like people are acting in line. Like I think specifically with high school clubs, it's generally like there are some issues where like people are like recruiting for their own friend groups and making people feel excluded, specifically in high school clubs. And I think it's really important for a club leader to sort of be impartial and try to bring together different groups and try to make sure there is like no one person who is the only of a certain demographic to like make them feel comfortable. And I think it is a lot easier to get over that sort of gender ratio hump when there is like two or three members of a certain group, and I, I just think that's really important. So I would say overall, like for a club leader, it's like their role to create a welcoming community.
I'll share as a coach that this is something that comes up a lot. I've talked with our administration, I've talked with other coaches, I've talked with our middle school coaches. For us, we've always been a male dominated club. And we've talked about how do we correct that. Our middle school has had years where it's only males doing it. It's open to all sorts of students in the school through gifted extensions and lunch periods. And we've been lucky in the sense that while we've had relatively few females, they've always been really great advocates and been like club leaders. Many have been captains, officers in our club. But we've tried a lot of things. So I love seeing the stuff with like the women in Quiz Bowl conversations and like the fact that there is the Discord communities. Because some of the females I've had have talked about how it is isolating. You go to a tournament and you're one of four girls there. And then after the tournament, you're like, I didn't love that experience. I also think there's still sometimes a little bit of old school thoughts with things that certain times, like it's gotten better, but I remember when I first started coaching, you'd sometimes hear a female player go into the room and it would be like, oh, there'd be the little side comments like even moderators at times going, of course you would get the arts or lit question. And that is something that really hurts the culture of that stereotype of, well, the girl's going to get the arts and literature. So really trying to make it that inclusive environment, try to grow it. But it is something that every time I hear the ideas out of the Women in Quiz Bowl forum, it's like that's something worth trying. But it's hard to get that ball rolling when their first tournament experience is often one of three. So I definitely would love to hear more ideas from others on their experience.
Right. Well, seeing anyone else have any other comments? Otherwise, we'll just segue into our.
I think real quick,
Yeah.
along the lines of inclusivity, I think from a slightly different angle, when it comes to outreach from a tournament director and organizer level, which you don't even need to be like the state organizer, as a captain of a high school team, you can help do outreach. I think it's really important to take a look at the types of schools that are attending events. Um, if you look at, like, for instance, the NSC, for instance, it's primarily private schools, charter schools, and relatively wealthy suburban schools. And I think that there's a lot of outreach that can be done at trying to get different types of schools to show up to your events, whether it's, public schools from the city proper, or schools that specifically focus on the arts, for instance. I think there's a lot more schools than people realize that have vastly different student bodies and vastly different missions, almost to a certain extent. But at the end of the day, they also would make really good Quiz Bowl teams, and they have people that are really passionate about learning new stuff. And yeah, trying to get them into the game, I think, because I think sometimes we can get a little tunnel vision and focus on outreach solely from a geographic perspective of, oh, northern Minnesota is entirely knowledgeable land. There's no Quiz Bowl teams there. I think, even looking at the metro, though, I think there's a lot of outreach that we could do in Minnesota specifically with different types of schools. And I think that to a certain extent would also help, like at the individual player demographic level. And then, yeah, so I think that, obviously what everyone's been saying about, like, at the club level and recruitment and maintaining players of different identities and perspectives, massively important. But I think also you can even take that a step further and take a look at the institutional level, and there's a lot of work that can be done there.
Well, seeing no other people, I think that's a really good note to end that section on. I know we had a question from, let's get the mic over there.
Oh, feel free. We've got time.
Yeah,
What we're here
we'll
for,
have
and
15 about 15
also
minutes or so for questions.
introduce yourself as
Extra
well,
time.
just
Okay.
for the recording.
Okay, cool. Well, hi, I'm Ellen Rispoli. I am from Indianapolis, Indiana. I coach the Heron High School Quiz Bowl team. It is such a pleasure to be here. This is our first PACE tournament.
Welcome.
Yeah, we're excited to be here. We've done NAQT's HSNCT for the last 4 years. We've only been a team for 4 years, so it's really fun to broaden our networks and, again, do that inclusion. So something that's unique about me is I'm a special education teacher. And so there are a lot of students who I know that we talked about, kids having really interesting, special interests and feeling a little bit weird and on the outside of things. And we also talked about not getting tilted. And we know that emotional dysregulation is a huge thing for giftedness, which I believe is absolutely a disability. Well, not a disability, but it's a neurodivergence at the very least. As well as having lots of twice exceptional people at the table. So first of all, I just want to thank PACE for everything that you've done to reach out and ask about accommodations for students. This is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. And so I guess I kind of want to throw the question out there about ability as well, right? Quiz Bowl is naturally a game that tests processing speed, working memory, right? Things that you naturally test really high on when you are on that gifted end of the spectrum. How can we make it more inclusive for people who like trivia, are interested in doing it, but maybe aren't as fast? I've been thinking about it a lot, but
I could come from a coach and tournament director perspective. What we found really successful in Pennsylvania is tiering our tournaments so that you get a sense of if players want to, if they're new, or even if they don't want to be as competitive, they can play in a novice or a standard division and then have like your nationals or competitive division. And while it doesn't eliminate the problems of the processing speed in game, it does tend to have a match that goes at a slower pace. More clues are heard, more things go all the way to the end of the question, and that sort of increases retention rates. That the first experience isn't coming to a team that's going to play pace really highly here at pace. You're not playing Andrew on the buzzer on the match of your career. So you're not playing him on the first game. So you're playing other people, though, that maybe are new or not as aggressive and want to do that just for fun. And questions go to the end. even if you only get like 1 or 2 questions in your whole tournament, you usually have a positive first experience because you didn't come out of the gate with that 600 to nothing game. So that's been really helpful for us in Pennsylvania.
Comment relate to your comment and have another question.
Introduce yourself, Eric.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Sorry. I'm Eric Mukherjee. I am the coach at the University School of Nashville. Go Tigers. So ironically, one of the interesting things about Quiz Bowl is as you play harder questions and you get better, the processing speed thing becomes less of an issue. So like pace with its like 6 and 7 line questions are really great. If you are not like a fast person and you need that time to process things, particularly I've noticed some of my players do actually a lot better on pace because they have like extra time to think about the lead-in, and oftentimes they're buzzing like 2 lines later when they think about the lead-in. I also wanted to make a related comment as a coach and as a former player who has been very fortunate to play on teams with what I would consider pretty good gender balance. One thing I've noticed is that oftentimes female presenting players it's not just that they're shunted into like literature and arts. That does happen to some extent. One of my best teammates was actually a computer science major, but they also tend to be shunted into what some have disparagingly called like Quiz Bowl mom roles, where they're put into like logistical roles and like caretaking roles and things of that nature. And I've noticed that a little bit on my team, and I would love to hear some commentary on how to make sure that the non-sweaty carding aspects of Quiz Bowl are also evenly divided among the players. I don't know if I'm articulating this particularly well. Okay, so yeah.
Okay, can I go?
Yeah,
Okay.
go for it.
Oh my god. Okay. Quiz Bowl mom. Yes, I think that's me. And part of that is just because in every space I'm in, I tend to be a little like I tend to take charge and make sure like my backpack back here, I have everything in this backpack. But also like it's hard because sometimes I feel like I do the things, and it's either I do the things and then everyone's like, why are you doing that? You're doing too much. But then if I don't do the things, I feel like nobody else is going to do it, right? But then I don't do the things, and then they don't get done. And and like my coach told me it was going to rain on this trip, and so I brought an umbrella, right? And then I brought an extra umbrella because I'm like, I know my team. I know someone is going to forget an umbrella. Guess what? Someone forgot an umbrella. I don't know if we're going to need it now, but someone forgot an umbrella, and I had the extra umbrella. And I don't know what it is about. There's a double standard, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Is people expect girls to be more logical, more like, well, not logical, more like sensible. More sensible. That's the word. People expect girls to be more sensible, to be more I think sensible is really the word I'm going for. Really. People expect girls to be more sensible and know what to do. But then people also, when girls decide to take charge, people don't like that. And it's really hard to take a balance because I know in a lot of male-dominated spaces that I've been in, I try to take charge because, there's a thing that needs doing and other people aren't doing it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the thing. But then when I do the thing, people are like, oh, you're bossy. Like bossy, I've been called bossy my whole life. People are like, oh, you're bossy, or like, oh, you're overbearing, you're dominating, all of these things. And I'm like, obviously I'm, not a perfect person. There are things I can work on, but if I see a task, if I see space that needs to be filled, I'm going to fill it. I'm going to do the thing. Like my mom always says, like, see a need, fill a need. And I think doing that, it's either I see the need, fill the need, and get ragged on for it, or I see the need, fill the need, and it goes completely unnoticed, or I see the need, fill the need, or I see the need, don't fill the need, and then nothing happens, and then it's worse. So I think if we could and this might be more for coaches, but if there was a way to, I think, delegate very specifically, like, you take care of this, you take care of this, you take care of this. Because on the Lindbergh Quiz Bowl team, we don't really have, like, officer roles. But I've found, like, I am just in charge of recruitment because I'm very extroverted and I'm good at that. Like, and there are other people that fall more into, like, they'll make flashcards, stuff like that. But if we have a very specific delegation of, you go talk to this person, you take care of this, everything is divided equally. Like, you find out how to get to this place, you look for restaurants. That way, not everything has to fall on one person. Because then, I know for me, when I try to do everything, I want to help. I want to help. That's just who I am as a person. But I also worry that I'm doing too much, but I also worry that I'm not doing enough at the same time, because I'm worried about how people are going to react to it, because I'm never used to positive reactions to me helping out and trying to do things that need to be done, basically, because of that double standard that comes with women. So I think delegation is really, and I think this is definitely more on an individual level, like coaches of individual things, but coaches and captains of individual teams, but delegation is absolutely the answer here.
So I don't have an answer to the gender issue, unfortunately, but I do kind of have an answer to just the Quiz Bowl teams are bad at logistics issue. Because it is an issue.
True.
It is so much of an issue, and it gets worse as we get older and we get into college and there are no coaches. College tournaments are so much less well run than high school tournaments. It's so bad. And I think it's just kind of, thank you. But I think it's just kind of like, you have to, if you're going to run a good team, you have to do logistics good, and you have to, and when you leave, as I'm going to be leaving Purdue next year, you have to leave a path that's going to succeed. And that's my primary goal for next year is not winning tournaments. It's not hosting high school tournaments, as much as I love doing that. It is ensuring that everything that the current generation of Purdue Quiz Bowl leadership has done is going to be there in the future, and ensuring that the people who succeed us are going to be given the support they need to make that happen. And I think ultimately, just no matter where you are in high school or college or even an organization like PACE or something, it's just your responsibility as a club leader to make that happen. And it's just, if you don't do that, maybe someone will step up, probably someone won't, and it won't get done, and Quiz Bowl's worse off for it. And I think we have a problem. I think the community has a problem with people just doing what they find fun and then dancing off and leaving it behind. And like, that's just, I think maybe we can make that more of a community standard. Make people who are good at give the people who are best at logistics like all-star medals or something.
Yeah.
Right? We give it to the top scorers, but we don't give it to the people who make it all happen. And I think if we could give some more, like, I don't know, pizzazz and luster and sparkle to like the logisticians that make it all happen, and write it down. Write a book, write a guide. That's something I'm going to try and do this summer, is write, and hopefully with Andrew, we talked about this, is write a new TD guide, because the old ones are all like super out of date. And like, I wish we made that more of a community norm. Be a good steward of your club and community.
I'd like to sort of bounce off that as a male presenting non-binary person who has always mostly been on the end of logistics, at least for my teams and for PACE. And this isn't like a super extensive comment, and it's just a thought, but to some extent, I think we need to be introspective about the different roles we sort of consciously or subconsciously place onto our non-male players, sort of as y'all were saying. If for some people, like, if taking on these administrative positions that may not even be their preference. For some people it is, and that's fantastic, and we should absolutely encourage that. Is the only way to be taken seriously, and having that institutional power in an environment where they're systemically denied it, then that is then that's something we don't want to see. And I do think it requires, people who occupy more normative identities to sometimes, do a position they don't want to do, and sort of share the load of organizational responsibility. And it really is on all of us in order to put everyone in the best position where, we're all having a lot of fun, we're all doing a little work, and we're all uplifting each other in this space we share.
I had 2 points off that coming from like just the coach level. The first one is build a culture where it's not gender based, but it's your leader based. So I'm very lucky. One of my leaders is here. He leads by example. Like he is the person who takes the buzzers for things. Other officers step up and have their role. And it's sort of filtered in our culture that the day will come for the freshmen and sophomores when it's your team and you do that. I think that's important for all sorts of activities. I think like in sports teams, don't make the freshmen and sophomores lug equipment. The leaders should do that, and it becomes like an honor of the club, and then it takes away the gender stuff. It's you want to be one of the leaders who does the logistical task. It's an honor instead of a task that needs to be carried out by someone. As for the female players, and something I keep in mind as a coach, and I can't take any credit for this, it's 100% my wife, who's more successful than I am in every way. One of her like mentors gave her this advice early in her career, and she shares it with everyone that she has mentored since, which is if you're a female in one of those situations, know why you are there. If you are there to be a part of the team, say that that's your role on the team. She uses it as like women often are looked at taking notes in meetings and doing the secretarial stuff, that team mom idea, and like don't default to doing that stuff. Like establish early that you are there for the same reason of everyone else in that room, and just have that voice. And I think coaches need to like foster that environment for their players. Like you're not the secretary of the team. Like that's not your job. Because it's really an important skill to know like sort of your role, and that's something that we could really help foster as coaches when you build that community.
Right. Are there any last minute questions, last minute comments? Well, seeing none, I think it is fair to officially conclude the 2025 David Riley Conference. Thank you so much to all our panelists. This was an awesome discussion.
Thank you for moderating, Eva.
Yeah, thank you, Eva.
And thank you to our wonderful AV team for making it all happen. Samir
Yes,
and Rama
thank you.
for setting all of this up.
All right.
Now in like 2 seconds, once the microphone doesn't get stuck in my hair.
I'm sure that was on camera.